LeMay's take. I'll tell you what.
It's a day we remember like it was yesterday, but actually it was 30 years ago. Tomorrow marks 30 years since the Loma Prieta earthquake. It was a magical night. We were all watching the World Series between the Giants and the A's, but then the earth and Candlestick Park shook. At that game, our very own Terry McSweeney, and we're all watching, and I was a kid wishing I could be at that game. You were there. How vivid are those memories here?
Like it was yesterday, it was stunning. First of all, it would have been a memorable night anyway. The Giants in the World Series for the first time in 27 years. Got a game at Candlestick, and I'm there. All of a sudden, that took a back seat. I was well up in the second deck, down the first base line, section 17, if you remember the old ballpark. And at first, I wasn't sure. I'd been at Candlestick a million times, and sometimes that ballpark seemed to kind of move a little bit. And it was moving a little bit after 5 o'clock that evening. So I checked out the plexiglass in front of the press box, and I noticed that it was really, really shaking, and I figured this is really an earthquake, not just a little shaking of the ballpark. I got up, took 2 steps over to the aisle, and 2 steps down, and boom, it stopped. The earthquake stopped. There was nothing more. There was no fade out. It was just over. And everybody cheered because there was an earthquake. It didn't feel that bad in the upper deck. And I went back to my seat, sat down, and looked up. The scoreboard was out. We'd lost some power, but I figured they could fix that. It was an old ballpark. They were talking about replacing it back then. And it was an old ballpark. Power was out. They'd bring it back. We were going to have a baseball game. And I sat there and waited, and 2 rows behind me, this lady's got a portable TV, just like that one right there.
This is old school TV.
Yeah, old school TV, no smartphone,
Look
folks.
at the antenna.
Yeah, exactly. And she says, oh my God, the Bay Bridge has collapsed. She was watching TV and saw it there. And I'm thinking in my mind, the whole thing opened up, and there's hundreds, thousands of cars in the water. It wasn't that bad. It was bad enough as it was. It wasn't as bad as I'd heard. Then they waited, and all these scenes were playing out. Players sitting on the field, and that gave me hope that maybe we're going to have a game. But bridges collapsed, and then players started heading out. As I'm sitting there, it took a while to cancel that game. Finally, looking out over the left field upper deck, you can see the smoke coming up from the marina.
Right.
And it was over. They canceled the game, and everybody walked out of that ballpark, and it was extremely orderly. Everybody very quiet and very orderly. We just walked out. Wasn't going to happen. No cheering, no joy, no anything. Just everybody left.
And what were the next couple of days that ensued when we really got a grasp of just how horrific what had happened was? What were those next few days like?
Well, I was working at KNTV, the old KNTV over on Park Avenue. And they were sending me down to Santa Cruz a lot. And down there, it was flattened. We were looking at more scenes from the game that night. Oh, man, it was, never forget it. Santa Cruz was flattened. It doesn't get as much publicity, perhaps, certainly as 880 collapsing or the Marina District, but Santa Cruz was flattened. The downtown was just laid flat, and I was down there a lot talking to the business owners in the community, and they were talking about coming back, and there was nothing there in this whole square block.
You're right. We don't hear that much about that.
You don't, and they came back. They were talking it, and they were doing it, and they came all the way back. If you've been down there, it is a fantastic community, and it's gorgeous to be down there, and that was nothing, and then it came all the way back.
It was just an eerie time being here on those days after it, and then the World Series was an afterthought. Everyone was so excited about the A's and Giants, but it was so eerie watching the recovery from the East Bay to Santa Cruz to San Francisco in that time.
Yeah, and I remember leaving the ballpark that night. I lived in San Jose. I'm driving down 280, and there's a part of 280 that kind of got separated, and everybody's slowing down. It's this one little spot. CHP's just pulling up about the same time we are, and you got to slow down there and kind of go over this. And as you're going down the road, you're thinking, how much more are we going to have? I mean, is there something else that's going to give? Are there some of these overpasses? What's going to go on? Well, we made it home safe, and everything was fine.
How do you think that's changed you now when you reflect back as we get to this 30th anniversary and you see it happening? What does that mean to you now as you go into it 30 years later? It
makes me super sensitive to earthquakes. I mean, you know we're going to have it. The experts guarantee we're going to have it. Can't tell us when. Sometime in the next 10, 20, 30 years. They can't say for a fact, but it's going to happen. And all of that damage, what's going to give next time? Now, they've done a lot of retrofitting at a lot of different places. We'll just have to see and stay together and band together and be prepared. We've been talking about that all week.
30 years. I remember all of us having to check our homes wall by wall to see if there's any cracks there.
Yes. Yeah.
Good memories, difficult memories, but thanks for sharing with us,
sure.
Terry.